Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester chats with writer and comic book legend D.G. Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/capesandlunatics. Hope to see you there.
All right, I was going to do music, but I guess we just jump in.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
Yeah, well, it would be appropriate to have music, though, because we've got Jesse Jackson with us.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, not that one.
Not that one. That's right. All right, kids, welcome back. That's right. I'm sure you've already heard his voice, but we're back for another Third Best Southgate, starring the most famous man you've never heard of, Mr. Rob Southgate.
That's appropriate.
Yeah. I'm Phil. Lilith is still on vacation for a few more days, but we're joined by, if you listen to any music podcast, you probably know this man, Mr. Jesse Jackson.
Hello. Thank you guys for having me. You know, this is a hat trick for me. On Monday, I was listening to Kevin Pollak's excellent Marvelous Mrs. Maisel podcast.
Oh, I haven't listened to that one.
Yeah, he's having creative people and guests join him as they're rewatching, and so there's been a lot of good insight on the show and the creative process. But every episode he ends with a question, and on Monday's episode he goes, "And I have a question from Jesse." Oh, and I was like, "Yeah." So they talk a lot about oneers. And my question basically was, based on context, that sounds like it is a scene shot with, trying in one without a cut. And so he expanded a little bit more. And then I asked him to compare Dan and Amy compared to a Sorkin Walk and Talk. And he talked a little bit of it. So it was very nice. He was careful not to say Jesse Jackson. I would have thought he would have made a joke, but I'm sure it's privacy issues, right? They're worried about the last name.
Right.
So then on Friday, I'm listening to the Hollywood Report podcast, and they go, and our first question is from Jesse. He wants to know one of the co-hosts is talking just amazing things about Reservoir Dogs. And I said, I've tried the first episode. It didn't really capture me. Can you make your elevator pitch? So he talked about why he loved the series so much. And now then on Saturday, I'm on this podcast. So I'm having a hat trick.
Yeah,
I am just doing everything.
Well, we invited you on because you're internet famous. You're on all these other podcasts. We thought, how do we not have you on?
Let's just keep the ball rolling. Okay, every question today is from Jesse.
Yes. Yeah, So one of the things I thought when you guys reached out to me is, for those of you who don't know, and I talk about this fairly often, but back in 2015, I reached out to Rob, who was at the time our leader. In a lot of ways, he still is my podcast leader. And I said, "Hey, Rob, I want to do a Springsteen podcast." And he says, "Sure. What's a Springsteen podcast?" I'm like, "Well, I'm going to talk to fans of Bruce Springsteen's music. Okay, well, how are you going to find them? I'm going to use the internet. I'm going to use social media." Okay, sounds great. And he told me this afterwards. He told his lovely bride, Jesse's going to do a Springsteen podcast. I think we'll get a season out of it. I'm now at 1,100 episodes. I've been going for 8 years. But Rob is the one that kind of gave me my first chance to do that said, and we've talked about this. One of the things that I love about Rob is if you're passionate about it, podcast about it. Because whether you have an audience of 1 or you have an audience of 1,000 or 1,000,000, the idea, if you love it, talk about it, and that is going to be fun for you.
Right.
So thank you for Rob. Thank you for that. But as I was explaining this, a lot of the things I was talking about Bruce, he said, I feel that same way about Wilco. So we are going to do a Set Listing Bruce episode today, but it's about Wilco.
Oh, hey, all right.
Yeah. So, Rob, talk to me. Where did you grow up, and what kind of music did you listen to when you were younger? What did your family listen to? Your mom and dad?
Okay. Before we say that, my faith in you was great at the beginning, but my faith in a podcast just talking about Bruce Springsteen was not. We gave it to you because, actually, I talked about it with Maeve, and she said, of course you're going to do this podcast. Of course we were going to do this podcast. But I was talking to her about it, like, how's this going to work? And she said, don't worry about it. Trust Jesse. He'll figure it out. And in my head, I think I even said this to you. One of our rules when a new podcast came to us was we would say, we just want one Netflix season. Give us 12 episodes, and then you can ghost it. But you got to complete it. You can't do 4 episodes like all of our video game podcasts did and just disappear into a puff of smoke. Pun completely intended there for our video game podcast. For you, though, Jesse, you obliterated that. In fact, you might have been at 12 episodes somewhere around month 2 because you added in, you had a couple of shows then running on the feed, and you just went running. And and it was really such an honor that you had me on doing what you're doing here. I was on as your first guest, actually interviewing you. And unfortunately, you asked me the question, so tell me about your favorite Bruce Springsteen song. And I went, I'm not a Bruce Springsteen fan. Welcome to episode 1. Even though I don't dislike Bruce Springsteen,
Sure.
it just wasn't my band. And I did say, if I had to pick a band, I'm going to say Wilco, although I've got so many bands I could say. But Wilco seems to be a family constant. In fact, we're talking about getting a family tattoo. All 3 of us. Maybe we'll get Allie in. I'll see if I can get her logged in because she did get a family tattoo with us on the last one of a Wilco-inspired shot so that it shows. I mean, this is something that's been really important to us. And now, Maeve and I have seen Wilco, I don't even know. I think we counted one time it was like 12 times or something. All sorts of different venues. One where I was 3 feet away from Jeff Tweedy, and he was eating pizza, and he was looking right at me like, hey, you want to have a conversation? And it's the only time. You guys know me. I don't freeze with anybody. I completely froze. I'm like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Because anything that would come out would be, I love your music.
Yeah.
Can you hold me?
Rob, one of the things, right, is we try not to be Chris Farley with, Paul McCartney, right? That Saturday Night Live skit. Remember when you did that song?
Oh,
that was great, right?
Yeah, that's what I was afraid I would sound like, for sure. Yeah. So the other night, Molly has gotten really into music, really great taste in stuff, and we in fact have something. I think I haven't talked about it anywhere. Jesse, this is a Jesse Jackson exclusive. Phil, where's the music?
Oh, okay.
Jesse Jackson exclusive. Oh, we have music. This is a Jesse Jackson exclusive. Molly and I have been recording. We've only done a couple of episodes, but we've been recording our own music podcast, and it's called Muzzle of B-Sides. That is a Wilco reference. They have the song Muzzle of Bees, which is fantastic. And we don't do all Wilco. We're taking, what we're doing is we're going an album at a time, picking different bands that we want to expose each other to. So when I was her age in high school, I would buy an album and I would listen backwards and forwards over and over. So you really knew every groove on that album. That's changed. We get Spotify. We listen to singles now, right? When I listen to a full album, I'm always like, oh, isn't that great? But you kind of lost that thing because they were so curated, a lot of pop stuff isn't, but a lot of the bands I listen to, like Wilco albums, those are curated, right?
Yeah. Because, and I'm going to get you back on track in a minute, but I love this.
Good luck with that.
I love this. Divergent is, there is one of the guys I had on the podcast, he and a bunch of buddies are going through the 1,000 albums you need to listen to before you die.
Yeah.
And they're listening to the album, they're breaking it down, and then they vote at the end. Do you agree?
Oh, cool.
Is this? And they talk about the very first album covered in that book, because it covers it chronologically, was In This Wee Small Hours by Frank Sinatra. And they said in a lot of ways that was the first true album. instead of just taking a couple of singles, throwing in some filler, and now then sending this out as a way to make money.
Sure.
This was the first. And there is that we grew up, and, I graduated high school in 1977, that era of the 70s and 80s and even 90s where they did think about that. You thought about exactly. And, for those of you who are Springsteen fans, right? Like supposedly, he threw away Born to Run, the whole album, because he didn't think it was right. And someone pulled it out of the trash. The River, they had a single album done. And then he decided afterwards, no. And they ended up on the box set he sent out a few years ago. He actually had that single album as one of the extras.
Oh, cool.
And they ended up, that produced like what it was ready. And then they decided, no. We need to do this double album. So in the days of Spotify, we just are iTunes Music. You pick the single, you go, or you sort. And unless you're a huge fan, like of a band, like my latest obsession is Jason Isbell. And, when the new album comes from Jason, you
listen to that album.
The same thing that you did as teenage Rob, right? You put that on, except you don't get to flip it. Unless you are still going vinyl. So,
Right. And we do, well, that's just it. We bought, speaking of Wilco, we bought that big box set that won the Grammy last year for Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. It's 12 albums. So you are flipping that vinyl, but oh my God, is that an incredible piece of work.
So the question I have is, can you remember when you first discovered Wilco, and what about their music spoke to you?
Okay, do you want that answer or the first question answered?
Well, you've kind of talked about how you're kind of growing up albums, so I'm going to skip to our Wilco.
Okay. No, it's actually important that I tell you the first part, because I think it's going to give you insight. And one more thing on Muzzle of B-Sides, what we do is each week when we do this, we're not recording weekly, but we bring to the other one an album and say, okay, this week we're listening to a Bowie album. And we both listen to it. Whether we know it or not, it's that immersing yourself for a week in the album. And we've only done a couple, like I said. It has been fantastic. What took us off track is we ended up going to see so many bands that it's like, you know what, I'm not going to do that now. I've got too much to do, and let's go enjoy. We went and saw the National. We've seen the Mountain Goats. We're going to see something baseball in Minneapolis. We saw Mason Jennings. We're going to Bob Dylan. We saw Mountain Goats again. We've seen Bright Eyes like 2 or 3 times. I mean, this has been a blast.
The summer of live music.
Oh my God. It's been a blast. Okay. So growing up, music was everywhere. My dad is an avant-garde jazz musician.
Did not know that.
So, and he's a percussionist. My childhood had a soundtrack of a practice drum pad. Okay. My entire childhood. That's my joke. I watch movies. I'm like, Dad, I don't remember. I seem to remember like a drum soundtrack here. He's like, stop it. But Greatest American Hero had a drum soundtrack. It's crazy. He also played vibes, and then he was a music teacher. So he taught on all the different instruments. We had a baby grand piano in the room. We had his drum set always set up. And even at one point, he had a double bass drum set. It was like the entire room. It was crazy. So I was surrounded by music. And then, ironically, the turntable that he got an expensive one back then. And he still does, a massive jazz album collection, right?
Okay.
Which I'm inheriting, and I'm going to have to sell some of it off. It's huge, right? Anyway, that turntable I just brought here because they're not using it. So I just brought it home. I've got to figure out how to calibrate it, and that's going to be our vinyl frontier upstairs. So I was surrounded by music, surrounded by jazz. Yeah, Jesse.
So the question...
Saw tons of live stuff. Tons.
Yeah, I have... Normally I have 2 kinds of guests. The people that embrace their parents' music and then expand their horizons to learn other stuff, but never leave their parents' music behind. Or the people that go, no, I have no interest in that till they're 30, and then go, that Johnny Cash guy my dad liked a lot? He actually has a little something.
Sure.
Were you one or the other, or kind of the middle?
No, I'm definitely in the first camp. I'm a big jazz guy. I listened to it my whole childhood. It wasn't until high school that I really started listening to like current music. That's when I found like REM and Husker Du and bands like that were not popular at that time. You know, REM had like one album out, but I heard it and was like, oh my God, like something's speaking to me here. Now, I will tell you, so my dad did not really listen to any rock music or anything.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, they got me my first turntable. It was from Corvettes, which was a kind of like a Target, but way back. They bought me a Corvettes. It had the speakers and the turntable and an 8-track in it. And in that, they bought me a jazz album. They bought me the Star Wars soundtrack on vinyl. And they bought me Beatles. They bought me the greatest hits with the blue. What is it, 66 to 69? Or
right.
You know which one I'm talking about? The one where they're looking over the ledge?
Yeah, there's the two of them, the blue and the red one, yeah.
Right. They bought me that, and my dad, I remember when they gave it to me, he said, you're probably going to end up listening to this kind of music, and I want you to have a bass. Like, I respect these guys. This is good music. It's just not his thing. He never really liked the vocals and guitars and all that. So that was what started me on rock music. It was the Monkees and the Beatles and you know, some of that kind of stuff. I had some things, but I didn't really heavily listen until high school. But I listened to jazz that whole time because I was going to everything. And like, I saw the biggest names. I saw Sonny Rollins multiple times. I saw, you know, he's the one that, like, to this day, if I could go see Sonny Rollins today, I'd go see him. I love Sonny Rollins. I saw Ornette Coleman, who's one of my favorites. So here's an interesting thing. So as I got older, even through high school, I was still listening to jazz. It was in my 20s, I found myself going back to it even more heavily. And I still go through periods where I might go through 2 months where all I listen to is jazz. Yeah. And then I go through 2 months where all I listen to is Wilco, or it's a lot of mix right now. Yeah. But jazz is always in that mix. And I remember we came back, we were living in Minneapolis, and we came back and I was talking to my dad about music. And I said, you know what's funny? I've been obsessed with. Now, I knew he really loved Ornette Coleman, and I was obsessed with Ornette Coleman, but I forget who it was. It was somebody else, and I said, I've been obsessed with him. And he goes, oh, yeah, that's one of my favorites. And I went, wait a minute, I never heard you play it. And he goes, oh, my God, that was like my number 2. And it was funny because we had a very similar trajectory in our listening, and they were very separate. He liked a lot of the bop and post bop, and then he did avant-garde. I was more post bop avant-garde that way. Okay. So it was really interesting to see that even though his bass was different than my bass, we kind of kept coming back to the same players and getting super excited about those same players. When they put out the Ornette Coleman box set, Beauty is a Rare Thing, which, oh my God, is just an astounding box set. Yeah. I remember I came home and my dad, who had all the albums, had bought the box set himself. And I came home and said, did you get this? He said, I got it. We were like listening to Lonely Woman and going, Jesus. I mean, it's just, but it's funny. It was like talking to a friend about music that's on the same trajectory as opposed to it's my parents' music and I'm going back to it. Did that make sense, Jesse? And he still doesn't like rock music. He never did.
Yeah. Is he still with you?
Yeah. In fact, yesterday, we signed up for him to go into a nursing facility, assisted living. Okay. He's got Parkinson's. He doesn't listen to music at all now. In fact, I had won a complete Bose system from where I worked. I won 3 of them from sales while I was there. So I have one sitting here that doesn't work. We had one in our bedroom that doesn't work. I gave one to my niece and nephew, who knows if that works. And I gave one to my parents. So I won 4 of them. And, it took a couple of years for me to do that. But, they had that. I finally just took it down maybe a year ago because there's been no music listening on his end. My mom listens to some music, but it's on her Alexa. So.
Okay. So that does give a lot of context. So you're seeing a lot of bands. So
and I like those arty bands, like a Wilco, like a Lou Reed. I love Lou Reed. The Beatles have very heavy art influence. Talking Heads, big art influence, and jazz. There is a marriage between art and music, and that's something I get really attracted to. Yeah. Music and dance, I don't give too much of a crap about.
Okay.
Which is why when I say pop music, a lot of that, they come back to a lot of dance. You know, Bruce Springsteen is singing a song and he might pop into a little thing. That's cool. He's having fun. He does a full dance number, and the thing is, like, that's a taped voice because that's not what I'm into. I want to hear them. Sure. You know, I went to see Phil Woods. My parents got us tickets when we were dating. Phil Woods is an alto sax player. In fact, if you know everyone knows the song "Just the Way You Are" by Billy Joel.
Sure,
that's him.
Okay,
on that, he was recording a jazz album like in the same studio, and Billy Joel was like, "Oh my God, it's Phil Woods!" And went over and said, "Would you mind laying down?" And he walked in and played that, and it became like the most famous sax solo in history.
That's awesome.
So we went to see him with his combo at a club, and we sat front row, and it was so cool. Talk about hearing. We were in front row, and I could hear him and his keys with the speakers were up here. So what I was hearing was purely what was coming out of his horn. I could hear his keys clacking. I could hear him breathing. Nice. I was like, this. I could hear the drummer, like, as he tightened something, you could hear it tighten. It wasn't mic'd. And I'm like, oh, now that's how you hear music.
Yeah. So then I'll go. Can you remember the first time you heard Wilco, and what about it spoke to you? And before I do that, is it lyrics or music more? The melody or the lyrics?
Once again, a context question, Jesse. I love it. Okay. I think everybody hears it differently, right? Hears music differently. For me, and it is probably because I grew up with jazz and because I was a musician, you know, I thought I was going to do that. I hear the music first.
Okay.
It takes a while for me to hear the lyrics. Every once in a while you hear a song and start singing along right away because it's just like chewing gum. It just goes right in and you're like, yeah. But the bands I talk about, when I talk about a Wilco or an REM or a Black Crowes or a Jellyfish, these bands, the music is what I hear way before I hear one lyric.
Sure.
It was heartbreaking when I finally heard Roger Waters' lyrics and was like, oh, you're a Nazi sympathizer. Yikes. This music is incredible. Right? But his solo stuff is not great if you listen to the lyrics. So it's music first. That's the opposite of my family. Molly is kind of a mix, but I think she's more lyrics. Maeve is 100% more lyrics, which is why Wilco works for all three of us so well. Yeah.
You know, I'm going to get your introduction to him, but one of the things that was interesting you talking about this is when we were going to go see Bruce, this was going to be Linda's second trip. We drove up to Cleveland to see him. We made a whole trip out of it. We did the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. We called it our Bruce and Bourbon Tour. But her problem was that she says, I don't understand what he's singing. He mumbles too much. He groans too much, right? And
she shouldn't listen to my podcast. Listen to my voice.
And I make the argument that's often a lot of rock and roll is that way, right? That I said, so what I want you to do is don't try to understand the lyrics. Think of it. Remember when we were kids and we were in the elementary school and they played Peter and the Wolf, right? And they said that each of those...
The whole story was laid out and it was all musical cues.
The instruments were playing a different character. I said, think of Bruce's voice as just another instrument.
Exactly.
Listen to the music and see if it emotionally moves you.
Lou Reed. I mean, yes, his lyrics are amazing, but that is an instrument, a unique instrument that moves you just from the way it interplays with the other instruments.
Yeah, and so when she did that, that was the gateway to getting her. And then once she did, then she would pull up the lyrics on, with the Mr. Google, and then could follow along and then learn some of the lyrics.
Right.
On this current tour, he does Kitty's Back, and it is the instrumentals and a lot of the horn sections. It does sound like something out of a jazz club. This live version, if you Google a live version of Kitty's Back in this tour, it gets very jazzy, and they take a long sambo. And someone's theory is at 74. By the way, we're recording this on Bruce's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Bruce!
He needs a break of singing and playing guitar, so he gets this 6-minute break
for a while.
I'm just gonna let them kind of play, and I'll, So anyway, I get that lyrics, the music and it going in there. So you sent me some songs to sample, and I did, but talk about your origin story with them.
Okay.
When did you discover them?
Okay, so this is kind of interesting. When you talk about relationship to a band, so they had that single Box Full of Letters off of AM, which was their first album. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember seeing it on MTV back when they played music videos and thinking it was a really cool video. It's the one where they're jumping out of a plane and the band is like the guy's playing the drums as he's falling out of the plane.
Yeah.
And I thought the song was a lot of fun. I liked how it sounded. It was a little different than what else was being played. It was in that era when, like, the easiest way to call it is kind of the alternative era, that 90s period where I know people call it grunge, but grunge was just an element of it. When you listen to alternative radio, it would be like Nirvana, maybe Pearl Jam, then Wilco, maybe an old Velvet Underground song. Like, it was music that was not, at that time, like Britney Spears or, Justin Timberlake. It was an alternative to all that stuff that was winning all the Grammys. This was something else. And I heard it. I thought it was really cool. And then I was working with a guy who I'm good friends with now, who's a rock musician, Patrik Tanner. And I was working with Patrik at a futon store. So we had a lot of time to sit around and we'd just bring in CDs, or there was a great radio station in Minneapolis at the time called Rev 105. You can go to Spotify and look up Rev 105, and there's still people have curated playlists of music from that era. And it's very close to how the radio was, although it does miss, like on Miles Davis' birthday, they would play a Miles Davis cut. It's a happy birthday, Miles, and they'd play it. And you're like, a couple of times during the day, and you're like, who does this on a rock station? It was very, very cool station.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Anyway, Wilco had just put out their second album, which is a double album called Being There. And Patrik was like all excited that it was coming out. And this is back when you would order from the Columbia CD Club. And he was like, oh my God, this album. I'm so excited. And I was like, yo, I like that first song. And he's like, how are you not listening to Wilco? You would love Wilco. And I went, oh, I don't know. And I had introduced him to Mike Nesmith's solo stuff, which he loved. And his solo stuff, Patrik's stuff, sounded, as he put it, if the Beatles had been born in Waycross, Georgia. Yeah, pretty much. It was kind of he's Swedish. I called him the Swedish cowboy because he was kind of playing Beatles-y pop in a country twang, but he's from Sweden.
Hey, Rob, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
So that's the same Patrik Tanner who does the theme
Who
music
does our
for this
theme
show.
song.
So
Yes.
that is Patrik
So buy
Tanner.
Patrik's stuff. He has a new album out too. Yeah, Jesse, if you don't have that, I'll send it to you. It's so good. So anyway, Patrik's like, oh, no, you got to get this. You got to get this. So I ordered it from Columbia Record Club. In fact, it was the same order where I got the Velvet Underground because I'd listened to him before, but I'd never explored an album all the way through. And he was like, no. And we had this big conversation about music, and he was like, order that. I had him order Mike Nesmith and this Van Morrison album. I forget which one. Doesn't matter. But we were just having fun talking about all this stuff. So I order it, and I put on Being There. And so I get that. I liked it. Thought it was cool. Then I switched jobs. And at this new job, I had to take the bus. So I had a portable CD player, and it was like 45 minutes on the bus. So I listened to Being There and Best of Frank Zappa. He had a Best of album that was out. And I forget what the third one was. Oh, it might have been Foo Fighters. It might have been the first Foo Fighters album. Over and over and over. And Being There, like, became part of my soul. Then Summer Teeth came out, and I bought that, and that became all I listened to for a while. And it snuck its way in. Now we move back to Chicago, which Wilco is more of a Chicago band, and there's opportunities to go see them. And some of the places are pretty big, but they're still playing here a lot. So we started going, and every time the show is astounding, and it's completely different. And like, you're going, holy cow, this is this is not a band that, can dip back 3 songs and they're out. This is a band that's going to be around for a while. And the creativity was getting out of control. By the time they hit Ghost is Born, I was like, wow, we're now moving into Beatles territory where they're in their own league. And the sad thing is a lot of people, when you get outside of Chicago, they don't really know Wilco, or they kind of know Wilco. And even here, I drive Lyft and I play it, and people get in the car and they'll be like, oh, this is really great. What is this? And I'm like, how do you not know this? We were from Chicago. They play it on commercials here. Like, it's on everything. I mean, Jeff Tweedy was on Parks and Rec a couple times. He's been on a lot of shows. He was one of Letterman's favorite bands. Letterman had him on a lot. So that was where it started. It was me listening to Box Full of Letters, and then Patrik talking me into being there, and that not necessarily slow burn, but that commitment. Like, I loved it, and I thought, I'm going to give this a real listen. And boy, that was the end. I mean, and what I was going to say, Jesse, one more thing. In our concert going thing, we're supposed to go see the one in Minneapolis. We're supposed to, so I've got a writers conference thing over the weekend. On Sunday, I said to Erica, the CEO of the company I work with, I said, you know what? I can't drive you to the airport. We got to drive to Minneapolis. We're going to this concert on Tuesday. We're leaving on Sunday, or going on Monday. We're going to leave on Sunday. And then that night, after I told her, tickets for Jeff Tweedy, a signing of his new book, and he's going to play some acoustic.
Oh, nice.
It was $60. You go to see Wilco, it's like $200, $300 now. $60. It's just an intimate thing with Jeff Tweedy, and you get a signed copy of his new book, and his books are fantastic. Everybody should read his first book. It's so full of great stories.
So I want to get Phil into this, and so I want you guys, and this is purely your thought, but a couple months ago, I had on my Babylon 5 podcast, we also do one-off episodes where we just talk about pop culture. And right now we're going through Sci-Fi's 12 Monkeys. None of us had ever watched that series. And
my friend Todd's amazing. On that show.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the name drop for the episode. There we go.
There's Todd.
So, he and Karen watched Western Stars the same way you and Maeve did.
Yeah.
So we discussed this, so he asked me to listen to Tragically Hip.
Oh yeah, Tragically Hip,
which is from a very Canadian band that never hit it big in the U.S.
Right. They had the airplay here, but living in Minneapolis, you did hear them on that Rev 105.
Yeah, and so I really, really was impressed with them. And so you sent me some samples on Wilco. Really enjoyed that. So thoughts on, and often if you think of Springsteen, you're talking Jersey. Same thing with Bon Jovi. Nirvana, the Seattle. So even though they may have global thoughts on bands that somehow get this local identity. And Phil, if you have any thoughts on that, and then we'll get Rob's thoughts.
Who's big from Pittsburgh, Phil?
I know there's a band. I'm not even sure if they're still around, the Clarks. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but I know that they've been big here probably at least for the last 20 years or so. I think do you think these bands just get local through like radio play and just like playing everywhere? Or Jesse brought up the Wilco, which I'm sure he's talked about before, and I'm like, I wasn't familiar with Wilco, so that's another example. It's
I wasn't either.
Yeah,
and
it's so strange to me because it's not just. I mean, they're an international band, but with radio the way it is, you're not really hearing when a new single comes out.
It could be a generational thing too, because I'm 10 years younger than you, not in the same region. So it's.
But it is, I sometimes think that what I'd love, and this won't happen, but if Sirius XM said one channel is blend, we are going to randomly pick a song from all 200 of our music channels and just play it.
Yeah.
Like, you may hear 70s funk, you may hear hip hop, you may hear classic country, you may hear classic rock. I'm like, I'm on a road trip, I'm having that playing, going, oh, I don't like that. Ooh, I like that. Because
my Spotify playlist is that way. I have one, and it's got like 4,000 songs, and it is just very random. Although Molly says it's very funky. I got a lot of funky stuff in there.
So yeah, I just find that fascinating because spending time with Wilco, they were very good. I enjoyed listening to the songs you heard, and my buddy from the UK, Terry Smith, that you guys both know, he went and saw Wilco just recently.
Oh, really?
They were in Europe
on that tour. Yeah, in fact, they were in Scotland. Did he see him in Edinburgh?
Yeah, he saw him. Yes, he did.
Yeah,
and
they're down in Australia right now.
How amazing it was! And I told him, and I'm going to let him know that we talked about it.
One of Jeff's sons is in the band now. He's not the main drummer. There's the drummer. The drummer that's there now is not the original drummer. He's a jazz drummer. Mm-hmm. And the first time I heard him, I was like, what happened? Like, this is a new drummer, but you can't tell from the audience. And I'm like, this guy's playing all these jazz things. Like, what is he plays like a jazz drummer. And then I found out he's the new drummer, and he's been there forever. But Jeff's son is now a drummer in the band. Mm-hmm. And they did an album together called Tweedy, just the two of them. Mm-hmm. It's excellent.
Wow.
It's excellent. That's Spencer Tweedy. And then his other son, Sammy, in his book, he talks about how they have a band, a house band, that has done a couple of live things, but they've never put anything out. They're called the Raccoonists. And Molly is obsessed with the Raccoonists because it's Jeff and his two sons. It's so cool. They're fun to follow on social media, too. So
I'm going to randomly take us away, but I just thought of this. I love the idea of you and Molly going through these albums together and her sharing something with you and then you sharing something. Even though you're early in this journey, is there a specific album that either one that where she showed you and you went, oh my goodness, this has been not just enjoyed, but oh, wow, how did I miss this?
Yeah.
And how about with her, one where you may have shared and she goes, oh my goodness.
I don't know if one has hit her that same way. She listens to so much music. She's very much like Maeve and I.
Okay.
We listen to a lot of music, and she and Maeve really share, especially the newer stuff. Like they love listening to Phoebe Bridgers and I love it too, but I haven't like explored it as deeply because I've just been too busy.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah.
The first album we did, though, she recommended we do Tallahassee by the Mountain Goats. Okay. And I really loved some of the songs on there. I'd heard it before and really liked it, but living with it for a week, I must have listened to it, 8 times. Oh my God. I'm like, this goes up there with my albums that I'm going to always go back to because it's an incredible album.
Well, because I do not know any of their music, so I think that's interesting.
Tallahassee. Try it.
Okay, it is that good, huh?
It is that good.
Okay.
It is that good, Jesse. You're going to really like the Mountain Goats.
Okay.
They're very, I guess you could say, alternative because it's not. They were one of those original lo-fi bands where their first 3 albums are all recorded on a tape deck. But you listen to those and you're like, Jesus, the music is crazy good. This is just some guy standing there with his guitar at a recorder. Which, you know what? In a different era, that might have been Bruce.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how this is. Now, they've been around forever. He's never going to be Bruce as far as that goes. Yeah. But their live shows are incredible. And it's like seeing a punk folk band.
Yeah. Okay.
They're Tallahassee, Jesse. Trust me. You're going to come back to me and go, oh, what a great suggestion.
Okay, good. So you mentioned you've seen them probably a dozen times. Mm-hmm. Are there any specific nights you also shared about watching him eat pizza?
That concert was in Milwaukee. Yeah. You want me to tell one that was special?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'll highlight that one, although as I go through them, like I can't remember.
Sure.
I mean, like I remember loving every minute of every one of them, but that one in Milwaukee. So the opening band was a band called, I might get it wrong. I think the name of the band was Preston School of Gas.
Okay.
That might not have been the band, though, because we also saw the Honey Dogs right around that time, and they may have been the name of the opening band for the Honey Dogs.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. We're going to go with that name. So whoever this opening band was incredible. We were sitting there like, what? Who is this? It turns out that band was the band Pavement. You know the band Pavement?
No.
You ever hear the song Cut Your Hair? Gonna cut your hair. That's a really fine haircut. Pavement is also one of those bands like a Mountain Goats. Once you listen, you go, holy cow, this is a major talent, right?
Okay.
Well, this band was Pavement without the lead singer. And they were amazing. And during their opening part, the Wilco musicians started coming out on stage and just like, hey, you mind if I sit in? This was all not scripted. And you could tell by the reaction of the band, like, oh, Greg Scarrett's coming out.
Yeah.
Like, what? And they knew they were like, so then Jeff came out and they did do a couple of Pavement songs and they just knew them all. They just knew them all, and they were just like, hey, can we do this? And they're like, yeah, we're changing our set list. And they would do these. Oh my God. And then when Wilco came out, they kicked them off the stage and Wilco just put on a show because they were so like musically energized and elated by like hanging out with the Pavement guys who would have been, I'm sure, heroes of theirs. And getting to play their songs a little bit, it went, oh my God, it was just a show that like, if I could go back in time and relive that one over and over, I would. And we were 10 feet from the stage.
Okay.
I felt I could smell the pizza on his breath. No, I'm kidding. That was an incredible show. That was at the Eagles Club in. Okay. It was either Milwaukee or I don't know. It was up somewhere up there, Wisconsin.
Is there, one of the things that, especially in Springsteen fandom, people chase songs. Are there songs you haven't got to hear live that you wish you could from them?
No. I mean, I haven't heard any of the new stuff. I haven't seen them in years. But there's nothing that I'd be like, I got to hear, Red Eyes Blue. Because I've heard him do it a bunch of times. Okay. I've heard Box Full of Letters. In fact, I've seen him do California Skies repeatedly. And that's incredible. Ashes of American Flags I've seen him do. I can't think of a song that I really haven't until after the point we really weren't going.
Sure. Yeah.
I think I stopped seeing him after maybe Ghost is Born or maybe after Wilco the album, which is also amazing.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, like, they've had a couple of albums that I'm not as attached to, but I think it's because busy, don't have the time to listen the way I did. Listening on a bus for 45 minutes. After you've done that for a couple of weeks and you've absorbed it, it's a very different experience than, I was driving and I listened and I was like paying attention to 100 things and, and then I listened to the new National album or I listened to the new Bright Eyes or whatever. So, Bright Eyes, right? I keep mentioning Bright Eyes.
Yeah.
You know Bright Eyes?
Do not. What? Yeah.
Jesse?
Yeah.
You need to find Bright Eyes. Just go to Spotify and look up their top 10.
Okay.
Or whatever the top 5. In fact, I'm going to tell you a song that the lead singer would not be thrilled by because everybody wants to hear him do this song.
Okay.
It's called First Day of My Life.
Okay.
And I can't play it. I'm going to turn that off.
Okay.
The name of the album might just be Bright Eyes.
Okay.
But First Day of My Life. Give it a good listen, and it will get into your soul.
Yeah.
He's from Omaha. The whole band might be. I'm not sure. Molly would know every detail.
Sure.
And he's been called the new Bob Dylan. He's not the folksy Bob Dylan. He's Bob Dylan experimenting with music.
Okay.
And now that I've seen him perform a few times, they're right. The guy's incredibly talented, and the music's just blows you out of the water.
Why would he not want you to mention that?
He's tired of playing it.
Huh?
He's tired of playing it. He said, I got to play that song everywhere I go.
Yeah.
So he's like, and I've seen him play it, I think, twice. But the last concert we went to, he didn't play it. That was a cool concert. One of the opening bands was Maya Hawke, from Stranger Things.
Okay, sure.
It's Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman's daughter.
Yeah.
She has a band. She's a legit musician, dude.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, celebrity band. Nope. She was so committed to what she was doing. She's been doing it a while. It was her and 2 guitar players that were playing acoustic guitars. And I was like, I could have listened to that all night. She was fantastic. and she's as committed to that as she is to. I actually think the acting thing might be her hobby, whereas music is what she does. Yeah, it was crazy.
So, I always think of this story. Linda Ronstadt was on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. So this ages the story, right? And she was talking to Johnny about seeing Frank Sinatra for the first time.
Sure.
And she talked about that she wanted to hear everything, right? She wanted to hear all. And all of a sudden it struck her that she is tired of singing Blue Bayou. But her audience isn't.
Right.
And she says it gave me a totally different perspective.
Absolutely.
That, oh my goodness, I'm wanting this. That's what my audience is wanting too. Right. And I thought that was, it is easy. And I've had people on Set Listing Bruce that go, Jesse, I mean, I don't need to hear Born to Run again. I've heard it. I've seen him 60 times. I
don't need to hear him do Born to Run again. Right.
And I'm like, yes, but that person who's never seen Bruce Springsteen live before.
That's what they want to hear him do.
They are going to. And she said, you're right. I will never think that way again.
Yeah.
And I had a wonderful buddy, Mark from UK, said, when I'm at a Bruce show, and he's gone to over 50, he says, I watch the stage the whole time. I'm watching either Max or I'm watching Bruce or I'm talking Neil till Born to Run comes. And I turn my back to the stage and I look at the audience.
Yeah, because you watch the party that erupts.
Yes, because of hearing that song, right?
Yeah. Well, see, that's just it. Like when Wilco, they have to play certain songs every time. Yeah. But I feel like they dig into it differently. Like they've explored these songs in ways that you're like, oh, this is kind of a new approach to it. In a way that's very satisfying as a fan, not being, because I've also seen people that do it and they make it like it's now a dirge, and you're like, really?
Yeah,
that's not great. And I also think you get bands like Springsteen or Elvis Costello. They have those songs that everybody wants to hear, but their catalog is so huge, that you have to go, okay, the top 5 on Spotify might not be played tonight because they've got 5,000 songs to pull from.
Yeah, there's been a lot of controversy this year because he has not changed the set list a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he has been very and we have different people. People like, no, I expect them to change the set list a lot. Other people said, okay, if before the tour they had given you what the current set list is, would anyone have complained? Well, no, because it's a wide variety and he has a lot of other things. It just I think some fans are a little spoiled because he would change often.
Right.
But he's doing a lot of a wide variety. I think there is that. I remember 60 Minutes did a story on Bruce, and the guy doing it had said, this song's so popular, you don't even need to spell it out. You just put 3 letters, BTR. And I was like, yeah, but if you notice on the set list, he doesn't write 10th Avenue Freeze out. He writes 10th.
Right.
This is, I think you're overstressing, but, so there was Steven and, I think it was Steven and Roy Bittan were being interviewed, but I know Steven. And they said, so you guys do that every night? And Steven goes, yeah, and one day we're going to get it right. And, the guy laughs and he goes, he thinks we're joking.
Yeah, right.
It's like, this is, and I love that idea of like, we're just trying to get it right each time.
So you got to listen on Frank Zappa's Make a Jazz Noise Here. I think it's like the second or third cut. He introduces the guy who's playing like vibes.
Yeah.
And he makes a point. Like, this is a live concert, and it is a lot of it is instrumental.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. I think the song was Dickie's Such an A-Hole was the name of the song, I think. And he brings out this guy, and he's like, we're going to have a special night. We're going to bring out, I'm almost doing an impression here, so-and-so to play the beginning of Dickie's Such an A-Hole. Because you fans want it exactly like it is on the album, and he effed it up. last night. So we're going to try it. So he makes him play it. He goes, do it the wrong way. And he goes, and the guitar player goes, don't.
Yeah.
They're like, do it again. He's and he's like, almost. And that's exactly it. It's like, you play these songs 8 million times and think about playing in Zappa's band. The music's so complex. And Zappa literally changed the set list from the stage.
Yeah.
If you've ever read his autobiography, he talks about it. He's like, hey, man, if we're going to play our songs, you better know my songs, and you better know it in every key and be able to shift it to any style. He had a thing he did on stage where, like, he'd go like this with his finger. He'd swing his finger, and that meant reggae style. And they had to, on a dime, okay, 4, 3, 2, reggae style now, in the middle of a song or whatever it was. Because you had to, it wasn't like, oh, my stuff is so brilliant, you have to know it. It's like, we're not going to get bored. We're not going to give the audience a boring thing. We're going to have fun with it. We're musicians. Let's be musicians. I love that. I love that. And Western Skies, you brought that up. Now, I bet that set is kind of a set, right? When he tours with it, he probably kept.
Well, see, he's never toured. He never toured Western Stars. That was a one-time performance. And in fact, on the new tour, he's doing nothing from that album, which is
really, because that's a beautiful album.
It is. Not one song made the cut. Letter to You did. 2 or 3 songs from it. You know, Tom Morello tells a similar story. He's touring, you know, with the band, and he's like, and that's one of the things people got spoiled during the last few tours. He would take sign requests, and he would do a lot of audibles. He would play. Yeah. And this one, he has more of a you know, it is in, according to Steven, it's a story we want to tell. Right. And, you know, it's a theme he wants to do. But Morello would every once in a while go, that's one I know. You know, would have to figure out.
You know, we just watched Billy Corgan and Smashing Pumpkins did a live stream the other night. It was an acoustic set. The whole idea was it was the 30th anniversary of Tangerine Dream.
Yeah.
And they had played a concert, an acoustic concert at Tower Records in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And it's this legendary concert. There were, 40 people there.
Yeah.
They recreated it at the tea shop that Billy Corgan now owns. And they even had the Tower Records sign behind him and everything. And they played the acoustic Tangerine Dream. And at the one song that they had to stop because they were afraid the floor was going to fall through, they said, well, this is the first time we're playing this song in its entirety. It was, first of all, it was amazing. But one of the things that it ties to this, it was interesting. He was saying that he and the band have been saying for a while, they want to tour Tangerine Dream again. Go back to, basically do that album with maybe a couple of songs off Gish, but nothing more current. And he said they're getting the studio, their record label doesn't want them to do it because they're like, oh, nobody's going to be interested in that. Yeah. And it's like, you know, when you're experimenting with music, like if Bruce toured Western Skies and he kept to that set list, yes, it's great to see when they change it up, but sometimes it's great to see the book they've written.
Yeah.
And that's how it felt watching this. I mean, we were like, I was so tired. I was, you know me, I was going to go to sleep after 3 songs. I watched the entire thing all the way through the credits and was like, this was an experience. Watching them do Tangerine Dream acoustically, you know, 30 years later, and still it felt like you were watching those kids bang out on their guitars, even though they were acoustic. It was crazy.
Yeah, that sounds cool. All right.
It was cool.
So I'm going to wrap up with, I do want to ask both of you. I'm going to put on my Evangeline hat and say, have you guys checked out anything from Jason Isbell?
No.
All right. So he was a young guy that played for the Drive-By Truckers, wrote a couple of songs, and got fired. Southeastern is his big breakthrough album. It was the first album he did after he had gotten sober. So I will send you guys 3 or 4 songs to try.
Got it right here on Spotify. Yeah. Just pulled it up.
Yeah. If We Were Vampires, Elephant, and Cover Me Up are 3 that are all similar musically, but very differently lyrically. There are many people that say he is the best songwriter under 50 going today. He would tell you that's not true, but he is pretty good. He also is, he has a small part in the new Martin Scorsese film coming up. He played up in Oklahoma. So, yeah, he's really, he would be more lyrically, though the band is good. His wife is Amanda Shires, who is a beautiful fiddler. She was part of the Highwaywomen, that kind of country supergroup. Yeah. So I'd love for you guys to check them and let me know what you think.
Absolutely check it out, Jesse. All
right, good. Any final thoughts before I turn it over to our wonderful host, Phil?
I really enjoyed this. This was unexpected. This show is always different since you guys come on and ask me questions. I didn't know it was going to be all music. When you asked me to send you those Wilco songs, I thought, oh God, he's going to ask me what the lyrics are. I could probably, when they're playing, I could probably sing along, but I probably couldn't tell you 4 lyrics, except for California Stars. I think I know that one because it's so simple. So this was a lot of fun to talk music. I always enjoy it. And Jesse, we'll have to, at some point when Molly and I make it official that Muzzle B-Sides is a thing, we'll have to have you come on and we'll talk some music with you. Maybe you'll pick a Bruce song and we'll have to do that one. Or
we could do a Bruce album or Pet Sounds. Like, I don't know if either one of you has spent a lot of time with Pet Sounds, but, I'm a huge Bruce. Yeah, and I bet you she hasn't, huh?
I have, speaking of Brian Wilson, I'm not a big Beach Boys fan, but I do like Pet Sounds.
Sure.
But I have a bootleg track of Jeff Tweedy live doing Love and Mercy.
Yeah.
I was sitting in a crummy movie with my hands on my head.
Yeah.
His version is like, oh my God, it's the definitive version. It's kind of like when he did the Dylan song. I don't know if you ever heard, oh crap. Let me see if Molly's here and she can tell me what the name of the song is.
Well, while you're waiting, I feel the same way. Obviously, almost anyone will tell you that Johnny Cash's version of Hurt is the official version compared to the original, right?
Oh, those American 3 albums?
Yeah.
Ooh, man, there's at least half of those songs. You go, yeah, that's the one. It's Simple Twist of Fate. Look that up. Now, that's on Spotify. Jeff Tweedy doing Simple Twist of Fate. It's like as great as the Dylan version is.
Okay.
I end up back at the Jeff Tweedy one every time. Even though the Dylan one is, I would put that in one of my favorite songs until I heard Tweedy do it, and I'm like,
yeah.
I think his interpretation, it's just, man, it's there.
Well, and I would make the argument that Highway Patrolman, that is off Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska album, Johnny Cash does a version, and I think Cash's version is better.
I can believe it.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to have Warren Zane, who wrote the book. He just wrote a book on Nebraska, Delivery from Nowhere, which I recommend you read. It reads like a mystery novel.
Ooh,
why is one of this, The River had Bruce's first top 10 hit, Hungry Heart. It's his first commercial true success, even though Born to Run and Darkness were good. But I mean, The River took another level.
Yeah, right.
And then skip an album, Born in the USA, goes into the universe.
Right.
And he does Nebraska Between.
Right.
Why?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And Nebraska, of those albums you mentioned, is the one that I like the best.
Exactly. And so this book, he interviews Bruce, he interviews people, and it's almost why. And I won't spoil it, but the idea of creatively, why did he have to take a breath before he went to?
It reminds me, I don't remember the name of the album, but when after Beck did Odelay, he had Mellow Gold, he had the big hit of Loser, then he did Odelay, which was one of those Into the Stratosphere albums. And then the next album he did was this lo-fi, like almost country song album.
Yeah.
That he recorded he went to a cabin in like the Appalachians with an 8-track and a couple of his buddies. Why? You have, I'll give you one other thing about Odelay, which is interesting. Which, I mean, this was a huge album, right? Devil's Haircut, What I Got, all that stuff was on it. Big album. So I had a friend that was a rock musician in Minneapolis, another guy who got a record deal, was smart, took the money from the record deal, and rather than blowing it, bought a studio. He actually bought the soundboard from Prince's old studio and bought a studio and made the upstairs an apartment. So he and his wife lived up there so that the studio was making money, and that money was paying back, because when you get a record deal, you got to pay it back. Right. So he didn't have to tour to do it. He did tour, but he was able to make money off of the studio, which took care of it. So he was telling us that Beck, when he was in town, recorded a bunch of the Odelay tracks. I'm like, oh man, what did he record? He goes, I don't know. He recorded about 60 full-blown, fully produced tracks. And that was just one of the stops. He didn't record the whole album there. Imagine how much material, where he was so prolific. And I mean, oh my God. And he said every song he was so jealous of. He's like, this guy, music is pouring out of him, professionally produced, great sounding, incredible music pouring out of him faster than I can get a recording going. Can you imagine?
No.
So yeah, you talk about that lost stuff. It's so interesting. Yeah. And I'll tell you why I'm not a Springsteen fan. I can tell you exactly why.
Okay.
And this, you'll understand, because the stuff I like, you'll go, it all makes sense. I don't like the 50s influence. The stuff that sounds like 50s rocker, New Jersey rocker guy from the 50s.
Yeah.
Eddie and the Cruisers type stuff. I got no use for it. Then you hit Nebraska, and I'm like, oh my God. Hungry Heart is my least favorite thing off the River. I really liked the River.
Yeah.
Hungry Hearts, that's a 50s song made later.
Yeah. You would enjoy, I think you'd like Letter to You.
I don't know that one.
Which is, that's his last studio album. It still has a little bit of 50s, but it's very much about endings and bands and death.
See, I like that. Like Western Skies was fantastic.
Yeah.
The only one I didn't like was that 50s one, that Johnny's Juke Joint, whatever.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
I was like, everything else is so good. Why did you do this? But you know what? That's his era.
Yeah.
You know?
It is. All right. Thank you. Hey, Phil, this was a blast. Thanks for setting this up.
Hey, thank you. I mean, Jesse, it was a great episode. And again, if people want to get more of Jesse Jackson, I mean, check out, there's over 1,000 episodes of Set Listing Bruce. I mean, usually he gets to talk more on his episodes. So I recommend checking those out. But Jesse, tell people where they can find Set Listing Bruce.
Sure. I do want to plug, if you listen to one episode, and you absolutely, there's an episode where Rob and Maeve joined me to talk about Bruce, but recently I had a lady named Sarah Gregory on the podcast, and I have just been talking about this because I think it's a story that's important. Sarah's grandmother was murdered over 20 years ago by a friend of the family. He was convicted, was in death row, and it went her a spell where she did a lot of substance abuse, self-medication, went through a dark, dark hole, got sober, kind of got her life. However, her butt was, I can't forgive him. No matter what hit her sober counselor, her, her AA sponsor, you really need to this. No, can't. And she was in her car and she listened to, of all things, Bruce Springsteen's song Letter to You. And it struck her, and she went to her house and she wrote a letter to this man and sent it. And I will not tell her story, but it ends with she's there at the execution telling him, look at me with love. You know, the last thing you'll see is someone who loves you.
Wow.
And it's all because of the music that bonded. Her name is Sarah Gregory. It's on Set Listing Bruce.
Check it out.
Yeah, it is an amazing, powerful story. I am on the Twitter machine, aka X, at Jesse Jackson DFW. Set Listing Bruce is wherever you find podcasts. And I will always give credit to Rob for being the godfather and helping me get started. I also do a little podcast called Perfectly Good Podcast, which is we are going through every John Hiatt song in alphabetical order. That's somebody
which
else.
I love.
Which everyone else.
Cool.
David Letterman that's another favorite of David Letterman. John is someone who is known more as a songwriter, and if you've not spent time with him, he is a great writer, musician. Last Best So for Conversation, where we're going through Babylon 5. in chronological order as a rewatch. I have seen it. My two partners haven't. And then last, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, the first podcast where I became part of the Southgate media family. And Charles and I are still going strong with that.
Is How Many still happening?
Every once in a while. My friends kind of drifted off. And so, yes. But
yeah.
Well,
if you follow the Southgate Media Group Facebook page or Twitter for now, I do share when I see new episodes of your stuff, as I do with Phil's stuff. So
thank you.
It's still alive. In fact, Jesse, go ahead and keep hope alive, because that's Jesse's tagline. I stole it. Enough said, right?
Yes, indeed.
I beat you to it, Phil.
That should be the ending of everything. No, enough said. No, just the beginning of this the episode, like, I think Rob answered a question with a plug, and I'm just like, you know what? For all you people who are like, why does Phil plug his stuff so much? I'm like, look where I learned podcasting, at the feet of Rob Southgate and Lilith Hellfire. I'm like,
plug machines.
Yeah. Let me answer that question, Jesse, with a plug. I have a new show coming out.
Well, and the reality is, we do this because we love doing it and we love sharing. But there are, there's not enough joy in the world.
Right.
And to share things that bring you joy, that bring you happiness. And, sometimes there's going to be shows or musicians or music you go, I didn't care for that, but you might.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's all different. So, I just think this is great. And, I appreciate it so much.
I have a plug.
No!
I do. I'm going to plug. It's actually all tied together. It's actually two things that are tied together. So I know I've talked about on here. I don't know if I've made an official announcement, but I have been hired by Four Horsemen Publications. I am now their VP of Marketing and Growth. So this is awesome. This is like I'm an adult, which is why it looks like I'm in a prison back here. No, that's a joke. It's just great. And Erica, the CEO, has a podcast called Drinking with Authors. I'm going to recommend everybody check that out. I'm trying to help her grow that podcast. She's on episode like 400, and she literally drinks with authors, and they talk about books, and it's just this highly entertaining show. And if you're a book person, you're going to find new authors. So check it out. It's called Drinking with Authors. Now, here's where the other plug is. This is the important one. So I'm trying to help them, Four Horsemen, grow their YouTube channel. So if this all works, okay, so there's an if. I'm not sure if it's all going to work, but if it all works, on International Podcast Day, which is the 29th or the 30th, it's next week. I should probably know that. Phil, go to the computer. When is International Podcast Day? I think it's the 29th. Anyway, on that day, I'm doing a YouTube takeover of their YouTube channel. It's Four Horsemen Publications. If you follow me, I will definitely share links. And what we're doing
Saturday, September 30th.
Saturday, September 30th. There you go. We used to always do our marathons, our podcast marathons, right at the same weekend as International Podcast Day, and we'd promote it, and they'd promote us. Well, this time I'm doing it for Four Horsemen. I want people to become aware of Four Horsemen, number one, because it's amazing. I'm in love with this company. Plus, I love books, and they've got just great stuff. But what we're going to do is I'm going to put – so on Drinking with Authors, she has had 31 or 29 – see, I'm getting all these numbers screwed up authors from Four Horsemen over the course of the 400 episodes as guests. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is throughout the day, it's just going to keep posting episodes that featured a Four Horsemen author from Drinking with Authors. So there'll be a running playlist every hour. Nope. New episode. It's actually every 50 minutes there's a new episode. It's going to stay up for a month, so you don't have to listen to 24 hours worth of shows. But it's a great way to get exposed to Drinking with Authors, to hear all these cool authors and what they're doing. And I am urging you, please subscribe to the Four Horsemen Publications YouTube channel. And while you're at it, if you like Drinking with Authors, go over there and subscribe to that too, because we've got a lot of really cool content that we're starting to develop for both of these as I'm growing these. And there may be some appearances by a Mr. Jesse Jackson. No, not that one, but this one. And maybe even a Mr. Phil. Maybe. So yeah, please. I really encourage people to check those things out and to subscribe to them, because I know what's coming and it's really great stuff. It's kind of like having Southgate Media Group, but now it doesn't all sit on me. I get to create stuff and have people do stuff. Yay!
Yay!
I only have 10 podcasts going right now. There you go. There was my plug.
For those of you who know, kids, that's nothing for him.
That's nothing. Yeah, see part 2 where I just do an hour worth of plugs. That'll be on later.
That's what the show is for. Okay, so thank you, everyone. If you have any questions or you want to hear Rob Southgate ramble about a topic for an hour plus,
or you want to come on and ask me questions,
yes,
I'll take yes.
So if you want promotion by just sitting here and listening to Rob ramble, email us, capesandlunatics@gmail.com, or call the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And you can find all of our Capes and Lunatics content, episodes. You can find social media, merchandise, and links to our Patreon, where you never know what you're going to get. You're going to get a little
buy
help.
Their stuff.
Yes. So
your call to action: buy their stuff.
There you go. So find everything at tubespace.io/Capes and Lunatics Podcast Network. That's tubespace.io/Capes and Lunatics Podcast Network.
I got one more plug. Next weekend, I am at SuperCon, SIOUXPER Con. It's in Sioux Falls. Get it? SuperCon. It's in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I'm going to be doing panels on Saturday and Sunday. I've got some great panels. I submitted them because I was going there for Four Horsemen just to check the place out. And I submitted for panels, and they called me and said, I feel like somebody from San Diego Comic-Con just offered to do panels. Like, yes to everything. So I've got all these panels I'm doing. It's going to be great. They're the same ones I did at Indie PopCon, which were fantastic. Lots of fun. So please, if you're in the area, go to SuperCon. Come check me out. And if you hear this and you do that, come say hi to me, because I'm going to be very lonely. No, I'm kidding. Maybe and Molly are going to be there too. Come meet the Flying Southgates.
Come meet
that's it.
Come meet the first, second, and third best Southgate.
That's right. That's right. So there you go. SuperCon and Four Horsemen Publications and Set Listing Bruce. And then buy Phil's stuff.
Go listen to Jesse's stuff.
That was my plug platter.
Yes.
Served up hot.
All right. Let's close this out with Patrik Tanner.
Another plug. Patrik Tanner and the Faraway Men. Go buy their stuff, too.
This song is what half sold me on this show.
Me too.
That's awesome.
Well, it's got the greatest first line. I was stoned, alone, and wearing your shirt. That's all I need to hear. I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Enough said.
Enough said.
Yay.
Say your thing, Jesse.
Keep hope alive, everyone.
There you go.